Optimism in Action is produced in collaboration with KAZU, your NPR station for the Monterey Bay area of California. You'll find this episode and archived episodes at kazu.org/sidebar.
There's nothing people can't do. I would say everybody should have their own approach. There's so much work to do.
That's today's guest on Sidebar, Richard Walden, founder, president, and CEO of Operation USA.
Sidebar is brought to you by Monterey College of Law, San Luis Obispo College of Law, Kern County College of Law, and Empire College of Law, located in Santa Rosa.
Welcome to Sidebar, featuring conversations about optimism in action with lawyers and leaders inspiring change. And now your co-hosts, Jackie Gardina and Mitch Winnick.
Jackie, today our guest is Richard Walden. Richard is the founder, president, and CEO of Operation USA. This organization is a Los Angeles-based international relief and development non-government organization. And amazingly, Richard has run this organization since 1979. One of the things that really caught my eye about this organization is that they organize private funding for disaster relief and projects, not only in the United States, but around the world. So we certainly are going to want to learn more about that. And I can't do the introduction without mentioning that Richard shared the 1997 Nobel Peace Prize in his work with the International Campaign to Ban Landmines, a very impressive and distinctive award. Richard, welcome to Sidebar Optimism in Action.
Thank you. Well, the exciting thing that happened, I just got a Cuba visa. I've been to Cuba numerous times since 1999. And our work in Cuba was mostly at pediatric hospitals with supplies. We started, as you may know, with Vietnamese refugees in 1979, and that led to working with Cambodian refugees. Initially, we went to the U.S. embassies in Malaysia and Thailand and elsewhere, and they said, oh, this is cool, you're getting free airplanes and you got all this medicine. And
Richard, let's back up for just a second. How did you personally get involved in this mission?
I cheated a little bit. My family had a home health business, and I was appointed at age 30 by Jerry Brown as the commissioner of hospitals. I was the annoying one the health industry didn't like. They said, what do you want? I go, free health care for all.
So we won't pick on you, Richard, but how has that gone?
Didn't happen. And we're way back now in 77. I didn't want to stay in a commission looking at numbers for the healthcare system. It wasn't quality, it was finance of the hospital system. And then one day, there were only 2 articles in the front page of the paper. DC-10 crash in Chicago, government grounds all DC-10s, and Vietnamese refugees flooding out of Vietnam on small boats. And they bounced from one country, Cambodia, Thailand, Malaysia, Indonesia, and some from the north made it up to Hong Kong. 29 days later, we're airborne. We have Jerry Brown and Jane Fonda seeing off at LAX. We have a plane with about 12, 15 tons of free stuff. It wasn't all medical supplies like we would do now. 40,000 refugees were on a treeless, waterless rock island off Malaysia, and they didn't have anything to store water. So what did we do? We called a waterbed mattress company, and they donated mattresses. And we got a lot of medical stuff too. We called 2 oil companies that were then based in LA, Arco and Unical, and they said, if there's any out-of-pocket cost, here's 25,000 gallons of jet fuel, and here's another 25,000. David Hartman was the guy in those days, Good Morning America, and he just thought it was cool. He goes, we're going to follow you. We're going to send a crew with you on this plane. It was unbelievable. I had an emotional moment where I was on this rock island. We flew to Kuala Lumpur, trucked everything to the sea, rented some fishing boats with fishermen, piled all this stuff. We get there. There's no electricity on the island. Everybody's apparently asleep. There's 2 guards on a little tiny dock. And we got there, and that day, 30 little children died of exposure in a Finnish Red Cross clinic that just had opened up. And I just by myself walked to the end of this tiny island and just let it out. And then as I walked back to the camp, I became angry. So the anger displaced the other emotions.
So that story you just told, that literally was the origin of Operation USA.
Yeah.
You didn't really have a name for it.
We needed a name, so we came up with Operation California because that seemed appropriate. Everything was going on in LA. About 8 years later, after the Mexico City earthquake, we were getting an American Airlines plane to fly down to Mexico City with goodies. A PR person in LA said, "You need to be real. Just pick one name." We didn't study it. I just blurted out, "It was Operation USA. I don't think there's another group." And they go, "Yeah, that's fine."
You make this sound like this was all happenstance. As I'm listening to you tell these stories, there really was strategic thinking throughout all of this. You knitted together connections and resources, money, planes, food, water, and someone was watching the international news to select things.
We met people. We met an ex-State Department guy who'd been in Vietnam, married a Vietnamese woman. He had been stationed in Vietnam as well as Thailand. He had inherited a moving van and storage empire in Long Beach and Santa Ana. And he said, "You can use my warehouse. I have a couple trucks, but I want to be involved because that's my place, Vietnam." So I said, "Yeah." He's still on my board all these years later. He's 82 now. By the way, I'm turning 80 in 2.5 weeks.
80 years young. Happy birthday.
Yeah, isn't that funny? But anyway, so it went well, and we got a ton of publicity. A man called and said, "I was Deputy Secretary of the Air Force under Nixon. I just saw you on Good Morning America. Is there anything I can do for you?" He goes, "How are you getting home when the cargo plane drops you in Malaysia?" And I go, "I'll buy a ticket." And he goes, "Let me call the chairman of Pan Am." He calls the chairman of Pan Am. We wind up with 5 years of unlimited travel, free. And that segued into Bob Crandall of American for a few years. And then United adopted us. And United Airlines managed to get their frequent flyers to donate 38 million miles, which we could use on all their partner carriers. So our secret was our overhead. We had free office space in Beverly Hills for 7 or 8 years, and we didn't have to pay to travel.
There's many things that jump out at me about this story. In fact, I want to buy the movie rights. As you're telling this story and you're saying the names of people involved, they're not red or blue. Everyone wanted to be involved with helping others, regardless of political persuasion.
Except the State Department's top guys were wedded to the policy of what will it mean if we let this happen? And so it was at that moment, as I started to meet all the relief people, the UN agencies, the Red Cross, CARE, International Rescue Committee, which was a fiscal umbrella for us because we weren't a nonprofit at that point. So we needed one. At that point, I just made a statement. I said, "We're not taking any government money. We're not going to be a government contractor."
That decision has resulted in a decades-long organization marshaling private funds for these type of relief efforts. I'm sure you have many, many stories that you're going to want to recount. Jackie mentioned movie rights, but is there a book in this?
I'm writing a book, and I spent 7 months in France last year working remotely. And it's called Things I Did or Think I Did. I got the title from Arthur Schlesinger Jr., the historian, at a dinner in LA where I was gushing to him. "How in God's name did you write 30 history books?" "Oh, don't write an autobiography. You'll have to document it. Just write a memoir. Call it Things I Did or Think I Did." And I goes, "Did you ever hear that title before?" He goes, "No, I just made it up." I go, "Can I use it?" And he goes, "Sure, use it." I had a couple of publishers interested, but it's been 14 years of doing this. And finally, last year, I said, I can't write in LA because I'm talking to you. There's a war on, and there's other stuff going on all over the world. So it's hard to focus. I had lived in France before. I thought I'm just going to find an affordable place in Paris, which luckily I got from an American journalist, and sit there and write 3 hours a day without notes, just like I'm free associating with you. Something will come out. We'll see if I get it finished.
Richard, I want to get back to the things that you did or you think you did, not the book, but your life. You've been telling a story about how Operation USA got started, and it was really about an international movement, about helping people abroad. But 50% of the work that your organization does is actually based in the United States. Can you talk a little bit about that?
One of my Paris trips, I got there on January 1st, and January 6th or 7th, Pacific Palisades was burning down, as was Altadena. So I went back to the airport, flew home, spent 3 weeks just making sure whatever we were able to do, we did, and then went back to France. That's kind of what happened.
And at the beginning of the program, you mentioned that you were excited to get your visa for Cuba because you have another humanitarian trip planned for there.
I'm not going alone. There's thousands of people going on what's called a convoy of peace activist types from different organizations. And they're all taking a couple of big suitcases each full of medical supplies for pediatric hospitals. So diplomats are going down and peace activists are going down. So I'm going to go visit the pediatric hospitals. But I've been doing this 27 years in Cuba. In another era, Hillary Clinton was Secretary of State, and we said, could we have a delegation of North Koreans come to LA? They're only allowed to come to New York to the UN. They're not allowed to go outside of New York City. There's no embassy in Washington. And they said yes. So the next thing we know, we had 4 North Koreans show up in LA. I took them to our Port of LA warehouse. I said, I'm not allowed to give you equipment without a license, but I can give you medicine. So each of you, here's a tube of skin ointment. Take it back to Pyongyang and see if any of your doctors want it. The next thing we knew, we shipped 200,000 tubes of this stuff. And they said, well, you can bring in anybody you want. So I called all these friends of mine, not media. I called all these friends of mine and said, hey, guess what? You know, I took you to Cuba and Vietnam and Cambodia and Ethiopia. Do you want to go to North Korea with me? And they go, no. So I went in alone.
So, Richard, one of the things that your story would lead one to believe is that there is the capacity within private resources to address many of these humanitarian needs. On the other hand, we look in this country when we've got natural disasters, and that doesn't really seem to be the case. Is that more of a cultural or policy or political decision we've made that we just assume the government is going to step in, FEMA and all the other organizations? That all leads us to the current question of, with the funds being cut to all those domestic organizations, should we be looking more to the Operation USA model? What are your thoughts about that?
Usually when the Texas Hill Country floods, the girls' camp was wiped out, we looked at it and said, wow, it's going to be tough being in LA to collect money for there because there should be plenty of Texans kicking in private money. The government money was late from the state as well as the feds. But one of our corporate partners we developed over years, Honeywell Corporation, huge. They said, our employees have been all over us because we work in Houston and Galveston. And I said, well, do you want to just give the money directly? And they go, no, we want you to. They sent us $250,000 and we found a community foundation that had a list of projects they wanted to do. We've done that with Ukraine as well. We have 6 paid staff, just so you know, 6, and we've never had more than 10. And the reason is we figured out you don't need a bureaucracy as long as you have partners. The sector of the economy is big. The nonprofit sector is huge now. It doesn't mean it's huge for Ukraine or Gaza or somewhere like that, but it is significant. Sometimes we have money from Honeywell or somebody will build a school after a typhoon. Sometimes we just can get a 53-foot sea container together and stuff it full of useful stuff and sea ship it, and that'll be that.
Support for Optimism in Action comes from the Monterey College of Law, a nonprofit law school serving the Monterey Bay region with evening classes on campus or in a hybrid online format. More details and applications available at montereylaw.edu. That's montereylaw.edu.
Question that I have is you've done so many amazing things. How is it that your organization chooses what to focus on, and what are you looking at for the future?
Some places we just said, okay, like somebody will call, said, I'm a doctor at Johns Hopkins, I'm Nigerian. My city and state in Nigeria really needs something, and if you'll have me, I'll fly in and go to your warehouse. You don't have to pay to ship it. We'll do it. And so I'll say, okay. But usually there are other places where we know we could do a better job, like Rwanda, the Philippines, still Cambodia, Vietnam, Honduras, and Guatemala. We were in Nicaragua for 12 years.
Richard, there's no question with all these travels and all of these countries you've been involved with that you're going to have plenty of stories for your memoir.
One other thing, I should have said this at the outset. The first sentence of my book, which is not changing, is Marilyn Monroe kissed me when I was 7, or maybe I was 8. And then I explained it was my parents had a pharmacy next to the MGM entrance in Culver City. And I came in from first grade, and my mother was yelling at my father. They're both pharmacists. You will not go near that woman. And I had no idea what she was talking about. She said, Richard, get $1.50 for this medication. And it was really easy in those days. They had like one guard at the MGM front gate, and he knew me. So he said, you want me to take it? And I had no idea who this was I was giving it to. And I said, no, I have to collect money. And he said, all right. I walk in. She's all made up. I don't know for what. No one in her dressing room but her. And she said, what can I do for you, sweetie? And I said, I need $1.50 for your drugs. She dug into her purse, and then she whipped out a $10 bill. And then she leaned down and planted a kiss on my cheek. I didn't realize that she left a huge lipstick mark. And I walked back to my parents' pharmacy, and my mother said, oh my God. And then my father was like, he was mad he didn't get to deliver to her. But it was a silly way to start a book. And then I start what I've been chatting with you about.
Well, Richard, we like to wrap up each episode with this concept of optimism. And you've just told an amazing life story of your dedication to these types of what in many ways turned out to be a very optimistic view of the ability to help and the ability of people who had capacity to step up and do their part, whether it was providing money, planes, influence, policy. How would you characterize your thoughts now if I were to ask you, optimistically looking to the future, what do you see?
Post-November election where you get some degree of power in Congress, there's nothing people can't do. I mean, just imagine, look at all the millionaires and billionaires in California, or their kids who are good organizers on a campus or faculty on a campus, and they're going to say, let's see if there's anything at all we can do in Haiti or this latest typhoon. California is so ripe for this because between fires and floods and occasional earthquakes, there's always something you can do. And a lot of those groups are quiet, but we give them truckloads of stuff knowing they'll get it out there. I would say everybody should have their own approach. There's so much work to do. I did that in Cambodia when we were helping. After a year or two, we knew everybody in town, in the capital, and I would go to orphanages. And every once in a while, I'd look at a kid in an orphanage and think, wow, he just sank a 15-foot shot on a basket with no net. And I said, I wonder, so you go to the person in charge of the orphanage and say, is that little kid as bright as he or she seems? And they'll say, yeah, we wish they'd start learning another language, but we don't have money to pay for it. I go, okay, so I give you $100 every couple of months when I see you. Will that be enough to pay for lessons? And the next thing you know, you've got some linguist a few years later, but you feel more satisfaction than, hi, we just helped the whole world.
Yeah, it's the mutual aid piece that we see in Minneapolis and some of the other places where communities are coming together to take care of each other. It doesn't have to be someone donated a plane.
Minneapolis and the whole community was together.
Richard, I was just going to say thank you so much for joining us. I could literally listen to you all night. Perhaps I'll be able to have dinner with you one day and have that experience, but
I need new friends because I bore the hell out of my friends.
Well, Richard, you can call on us anytime. Jackie and I volunteer, and as you can tell, we're good listeners, and we love this story. Tell us how our listeners can learn more about Operation USA.
We're at Operation USA. We have a website. We have videos of Mary Poppins talking about us. We have other fun things. We have a cool 12-minute video about our origins, and it might interest people. But I really appreciate having a long form. Can you imagine somebody asking me a question? You've got 30 seconds to answer.
Well, Richard, thank you very much. Thank you for what you've done with Operation USA. It's a wonderful message to people. There are things each of us can do if we put our mind to it.
Mitch, that was a delightful conversation. I think listening to Richard talk about the origins of Operation USA and the amazing work that the organization has done, not just internationally, but domestically as well. The way he talks about it, you lose sight of the amazing impact that organization has had and the real message behind it, which is that there's opportunities for communities to really come together and create changes and opportunities for those in their community. Operation USA doesn't go in and fix a community. It finds community-based organizations to provide services to, either products or money, and allows the community to do it. And I think it's so important to understand that it's really the work of those in the communities, whether it's in Cambodia or whether it's in Texas, that makes Operation USA's work have meaning. And it's always important for us to remember that we all have a part to play in the kind of work that needs to be done right now.
And Jackie, I'd like to pick up on what you just said, that last part about we all have a role to play. Richard Walden says, what you do is you look for opportunities where you can do good. And without a strategy, as he himself said, they saw, they went, they invested, and then they invested in some cases over decades. And even at age 80, he's still doing it. He's still making a trip. Cuba, no power, no electricity, no health care. And what was his reaction? To get on a plane and go down and see how he could help. And I think that is an amazing message for us all to think about, how you can do good work and how you can make a change.
Once again, I want to thank everyone who joined us today on Sidebar. And as always, Mitch and I would love to know what's on your mind. You can reach us at SideBarMedia.org.
Sidebar would not be possible without our producer, David Eakin, who composes and plays all of the music you hear on Sidebar. Thank you also to Dina Dowsett, who creates and coordinates Sidebar's social media marketing.
Optimism in Action is produced in collaboration with KAZU, your NPR station for the Monterey Bay area of California. You'll find this episode and archived episodes at kazu.org/sidebar.